I'm Sonya Louise, and today I'm coming to you live from the Grand Teton National Park area in Wyoming, USA. And this is created for the Soulmate Survivor group, so I feel like I don't really need to introduce myself, but just in case we use this video in other ways, I'll just do a little brief introduction. I work with women in their 40s who are on what I affectionately call their soulmate survivor quest. And I primarily work with women in their 40s who feel like they've been burned one too many times and they're ready to do things a different way. And my primary tools for transformation are Vision Quest, both actual Vision Quest and virtual Vision Quest, which is where the group comes in. And I want to introduce you to Wes. Hi, Wes.
Hello, hello.
Wes is my soulmate. And where are you coming from today, Wes?
Sunny Vero Beach, Florida.
I have a little sun here too. So I'm presently on a vision quest, on a soulmate survivor vision quest in the Grand Tetons, and I have you amazing group of ladies coming along with me virtually. And Wes and I have been spending a lot of time on the phone together and on Zoom and on Facebook Messenger, and our relationship is still relatively new. And we've committed to honesty and to exploring just how deep this connection can go. And in a lot of our interactions, the energy that we exchange and the conversation gets really fascinating. And I thought it would be useful to invite some of the ladies to kind of join in and see what it looks like when two whole people connect with one another from a place of allness and fullness and not from a place of need and lack. So I suggested to Wes that we start recording some of our conversations, which he promptly freaked out. And I promptly freaked out. And we talked about it for a few days and then decided that we would hit record and we would keep private what we decided we wanted to keep private by editing that out. And the things that we thought would be useful and of value, Wes would put together in a video that we could post in the group. So today, we're just going to revisit how our relationship got started. And a couple of takeaway points for you listeners is, number one, that your soulmate can literally be standing right in front of you and you don't even realize it. And the difference in energy when two whole people come together to support and complement each other, as opposed to coming from a place of need and lack, and how the energy signatures are different. And then the third is how to explore this connection without putting labels and expectations on it, and how that changes the relationship dynamics. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Wes, and he's going to talk about how he got started on his spiritual path, because this really is more of a spiritual partnership than it is your typical romantic partnership. And maybe you can talk like just briefly about your thoughts on like how the relationship that we're having is different than what like your traditional relationship is. And then kind of go into how you got started on your spiritual path.
Well, for this relationship that we're involved in, the energy's different. It's not like well, it caught me by surprise, because most of my relationships in the past have been based on pretty much lust, the sex thing. You have an attraction to that person and you pursue it and you try to make a relationship out of it, and haven't been very good at that department. So this one was different. There was an energy there that I couldn't explain. I couldn't understand it, because I'd known Sonya for years in a professional level. We worked at different organizations, but we were part of a continuum where we all pulled together and had a common cause for helping people. But
that was 15 years ago.
yeah, yeah, we weren't close. It was just professional. She was married, and I had girlfriends, and I was the IT guy, so I came over to where she worked a lot of times and worked on their computers, but we were just friends, just flat out friends. And with this situation, things changed and shifted like at the speed of light. It was like crazy. But I've been on my spiritual journey almost my whole life, unannounced, but hardcore in the last 3 years. So when I say that, what I mean is I've done a lot of positivity work, vitamins, rituals, rocks, crystals, yoga, exercise. I mean, I've been in the self-improvement stuff just all the time, on and off, ever since I was in my 20s. So that never really stopped. But the spiritual stuff started for me at a very young age. But in the last 3 years, with a tragedy that occurred, first time in my life I got fired from a job that I was at for almost 13 years. So that caught me totally off guard. And when that happened, then proverbially the crap hit the fan for me, and I didn't know what to do at my age and stuff. It was quite a shock for me, because I usually quit jobs. I don't usually get fired from them. So that threw me for a loop, and that caused me to come to a point in my life where it was so dramatic for me that it was either I got to a critical mass to where it was either I was going to check out or check in. That's how serious it got for me on the inside. I literally didn't want to be here anymore. And I didn't know what to do with that. So I laid around in the bed for a few months, just totally depressed out of my mind. And I started slowly crawling out of the hole, because it was literally presented to me internally that, you either check out or you check in. Your choice. What are you going to do? And I don't know, some grace must have touched me, because I decided to try checking in. The only thing I knew to do at that point was get on my bike and start exercising, riding up down A1A in Vero Beach, because I didn't have any job prospects. I'd done a bunch of resumes and all that. Long story short, I wasn't finding work, not like I thought I would, and money was getting thin, so everything was just crashing in. So my whole paradigm shift. So that's what I started doing, was exercising first, and then I started meditating, because I grew up in a very religious family, and I had quite an experience when I was young. So I knew the God thing, but I wasn't comfortable with the system, the religious system. So I had been rebelling against that most of my life. So it was impressed upon me to start meditating, and I took it serious. I earnestly went after meditating, not really having a technique, didn't read any book or have no specific way to do it. I just went on my intuition and got in a really quiet place and proceeded to watch my breath and just do what felt right. And things started shifting very slowly at first. I had people reaching out to me that I hadn't talked to in years and giving me insights. And I mean, it was, if you'd have handed me anything spiritual, religious at that point, I would jump on it, because it was like, if it was showing up, it was meant to be. So I read The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer, and that was one of the books that I really took to heart. That helped me quiet this monkey mind, the voice in your head that's always talking to you and beating you up. So that started me crawling out of the mess I was in psychologically. So I started feeling things and getting insights, and next thing you know, I was told to post things on Facebook. I was getting insights in my meditation, and one morning it was like, you need to share this. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. Share something on Facebook? That was like totally left field for me. That was totally uncomfortable. So I pushed that off for a few weeks. And finally I wrote a little blurb and put it out there, and intuition said, you need to add a picture to it. So I went and looked up some photos and copy and paste. And next thing you know, I started making little posts, and it was just what come through with meditation that may be helpful for somebody else, and it helped me. And that went on for about a year. And it got real easy for me. I mean, things just came to me. I just knew what photos to grab. They had messages in the photos, a message with the message. But anyway, then it progressed to videos. And that was, boy, that was the next pressure point. It was like, what? Make a video? Oh my God, no, I don't want to be seen on anything. So doing that was like pulling teeth in my hair, and you know, you get all nervous, but after you do a few, you start to relax into it. Plus I wasn't doing live ones. I was recording them, and then I would upload them to my page and share them. And I started getting responses from that because I was trying to make sense of the religious system, the New Age spiritual system, and what had happened to me when I was very young and how it all really worked versus what everybody told me I was supposed to do or told me what God was. So things just started developing from that point, and I started, you know, having stuff come up. And a lot of it wasn't pleasant, but I wasn't running from it anymore. I decided to fully embrace it. I
When
decided,
you say stuff started coming up and you weren't comfortable with it, can you be a little more specific?
yeah, I'd be shown things about my behaviors, my emotional mindset. I'd be shown my role that I played in certain incidents that happened in my life. Whereas before I was seeing or blaming those people for what happened, I was beginning to see what my part was in it and how I actually played a bigger part in how it went than I ever thought. So I started taking responsibility for my crap. And that was a whole new different mindset. I started stepping out of being a victim and stepping into being empowered, which takes a lot of responsibility. And it's not fun. It's not easy. It's kind of scary. It's powerful in one sense because you know you have some kind of control. But in the other sense, it's like, oh my God, what do I do with what comes up now? Because I can't run from it anymore. Once you step over certain thresholds in this journey, you just literally can't go back. You feel like you're dying if you do. And I didn't want any part of that. I was ready to take on whatever it was, no matter how it played out. And I was wide open. My heart chakra just got blown completely wide open when I fully embraced this. I mean, I went and seen a person at a spiritual place and she did like a little reading on me. And she like said, oh my God, your heart chakra reaches out like almost 10 to 15 feet. She goes, most people, it's only 3 or 4. I said, I know, I feel it all the time. It's like crazy. I don't know what to do with it. Because it was like mind blowing. I said, I feel everything. Said, oh my God. And she's like, well, it's not a bad thing. It's actually a good thing. And I'm like, oh yeah, tell me about it. Yeah, good thing. Because it was overwhelming at times. It really was. I mean, when I had my first breakdown before I got fired, things were turning up before I got fired from my job. The heat was getting hot. I literally called up a friend, started asking him. I said, I think I'm going crazy. I'm losing my mind. I got this pain in me and I can't turn it off. And I was telling him, well, I'm doing everything I can think to do. You know, I'm not drinking. I'm exercising. I'm eating healthy foods. I'm doing everything I know to do that I've done in the past to make this pain go away, and it's not going away. I said, I think I'm going crazy. And the friend on the phone said, oh no, this is wonderful. This is the best thing that could ever happen to you. You're waking up. And I was like, what? Are you friggin' crazy? I said, I feel like I want to go shoot myself in the head, jump off a bridge. And you're telling me this is good? He goes, oh, Wes, this is beautiful. And I was like wanting to choke the guy through the phone. But he was right. I mean, he gave me some books to read and some things to do, practices, and I jumped on them, not knowing I was going to get fired a few months later. So that was like, here's your lifesaver. And oh, by the way, you won't have any work going forward. So you have plenty of time to figure all this out. Didn't see that coming. So that's where I started on this hardcore learning. I felt like I was literally taking speed from God. I was devouring books and everything. And I've done this in the past, but not like this. This was like, just couldn't get enough. I mean, stay up to 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, just devouring information. And it's just, it wouldn't turn off. It was like crazy. Even when I was sleeping, things were coming to me, what everybody calls downloads. So yeah, it was accelerated. And at times it was extremely overwhelming. But slowly I started seeing the fruits from it. And the clouds started clearing a little bit. I started getting a little bit more grounded. But that's, since then. I'm going now, it's 3.5, 4 years now, and it's still not letting up. Every time I turn around, there's some new twist and turn, which,
Some new twist.
yeah, with this relationship thing,
Speaking of new twists.
yeah, it came out of nowhere. So that's
So,
how I met Sonya. And I followed her. I was following you on Facebook because I'm thinking I'm going nuts, and I'm seeing you, and all of a sudden I thought you had the perfect life, and you like kind of went, well, I'm going on a walkabout. And I'm like, what the heck is that? And why would you do that? You have a great job and looks like you got a great relationship. And I'm like, something's up. So Spirit was talking to me through things like that. I was taking notice. So I reached out to you a few times with materials that I was reading. Spirit would say, you need to share that with her. I'm like, really? I don't know what she's really doing. She may not be interested in this at all, but that's just my nature. So I shared stuff with her, and come to find out later on, some of it was pretty integral to part of her journey. So that's how we kept bouncing back and forth, and we were still just distant friends. I was like, I seen somebody that made my heart feel like they were the real deal and they were really trying, and I can really tune into that because I really can sense energies. So that was a green light for me to help, and that's kind of how I determine whether I really want to help someone, is how it really feels. So how about you, Sonya? Your side of the page.
yeah, so my spiritual journey started with what I call divine disorder as well. I was working at the family winery, and I was engaged to be married, and my mom lived with me and worked with me. And so I had known for some time that the winery was not where I was supposed to be, but I felt a tremendous sense of loyalty to the family that I was working with, to my mom, to my fiance, to my sense of responsibility, to like, how do you just like walk away from something like this? And we were in in secession. Like we were supposed to take over the winery, and Big Head was gonna retire. Like, how do you just walk away? But I knew that I was in the wrong place, and I knew that I needed to make a change, and I just wasn't making the change that I knew I needed to make. And I ended up getting a DUI. And so I didn't get fired, but that was like, in essence, kind of almost the same thing. But also it came with a tremendous amount of shame and guilt and judgment and beating myself up. Like, how could I let this happen? But I also knew that that it was an opportunity to make a change that really needed to be made, that I had not had the courage to make prior to that. So I stopped drinking and started trying to figure out like what I was going to do, like how, like actually at first I tried to figure out how am I going to not drink and still run the winery, and that just didn't work. And meanwhile, like everything just started imploding. All of my important relationships were imploding. Everything was imploding. And it just reached a level that my inner turmoil was so tremendous that I didn't trust myself to make good choices anymore. And I just felt like I needed to extricate myself from my situation to clear my head so I could figure out like, how am I supposed to move forward? And so I went on a solo camping trip. And so I think about like how you said you turned to meditation. Like for me, that was my meditative practice. That was my first, like, I need to get out into nature. I need to go someplace where I can't be distracted, which is what meditation kind of is. And I found this campground, and I went for a long weekend and really felt a sense of peace and connection and clarity. And I was able to make some decisions, and it was great. And following that, I knew I couldn't go back to the winery. I knew I needed to make changes in my relationship. I knew I needed to make changes in my entire life, but I didn't know how to do that. And I did feel like a crazy person, because like who does that? And so every time I got around people and I tried to explain what was happening inside me, it made me feel crazy. So I went camping again because when I was out in nature, I didn't feel so crazy. I felt like totally at peace, and that I was able to make choices that I knew were in alignment with who I really was. And I felt closer to like walking an authentic walk where I wasn't having to pretend that I felt anything or I was anything. I just could be myself. So I started taking these solo camping trips like all over the state of Washington. And I really felt like super clear about there's more to life than the way that I've been living it. And I want to make some radical changes. And everyone in my life thinks I'm crazy, but I don't care. And I need to go someplace where I can allow what's in me to emerge without being inhibited by what other people have to say, think, feel about it, whatever. And so I got this idea in my head about walkabout. I had read books like Wild by Cheryl Strayed, and I had heard about women that walked the Appalachian Trail. And I thought to myself, like, I want that kind of experience, just this solitary journey into wild and untamed places, because I was feeling a connection to nature. I was feeling an inner guidance system that was coming to life in me that I could hear very clearly when I was out in nature. And so I had heard about Aboriginal adolescents that go on walkabout, and they basically just like go out into the bush all by themselves without a plan, and they just wander around until like they emerge into adulthood. It's just this very indefinite thing. And so I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do that. Like, I'm just going to put stuff in my car. Like, I've been doing solo camping. I can just do that, but I'll just load everything in my car, and I'm just going to stay on the road until like I know I'm done. Like, it'll just be just like walkabout. And so that's what I did. I just threw a bunch of stuff in my car, and my son was my son was pregnant. Cameron and Julia were pregnant, and my grandson was being born in Florida in December. And when this was happening was back in like August, September, October time period. So the idea was like, I'll just get in my car in Washington State, and I'll just make sure I somehow end up in Florida in December in time for the baby to be born. And between here and there, I have no idea like where I'm going to go or what I'm going to do. I just know that I want to seek out solitary places where there's ample nature, wild and untamed, and I want to make a connection to the guidance system that's coming alive in me, and I just want to open myself to new possibilities. So the idea was to unplug and not to like be super surrounded by people, but I had people who were concerned about me. And I kind of wanted to share pieces of my journey because I got the idea that I couldn't be the only person who was so deeply dissatisfied with life and thought that there's a better way to live it. And so I wanted to kind of let people in on what I was doing without sacrificing what I was trying to accomplish. So every now and then I would put something on Facebook. Plus I didn't have internet or cell service a lot of the time because of the kinds of places I was going to. But that was my spiritual like awakening and the path that I decided to take to go deeper, to make that connection with what I now call the universe or the source, God source, or infinite intelligence, universal love. I could kind of call it the universe now. But yeah, you were sending me stuff from time to time, like a meditation thing or just various things. And it just felt good to know that there were people who were supportive of what I was doing. But it was a very internal process for me. And then I ended up in Vero when the baby was born. And then I came back to Vero the following February. And I had gotten in my head that I was going to do like 50 states. I was going to put down 1,000 foot miles across 50 states in 2017. Like that was going to be my journey. That's what I felt inspired to do. And of course, Florida was one of those states. So when I got to Florida in February, I was kind of saying goodbye to my son and grandson for the year because I was going to be gone for the entire year. And we had this kind of like back and forth spiritual sharing. And I just like had this inkling one day. I was going to go do happy hour at the patio. And I just had this thing like, you should call Wes and see what he's doing right now. And I was like, well, he's probably busy. But I was like, okay, I'll just call Wes and see what he's doing right now. And so I called you and I was like, hey, Wes, like, you want to do happy hour at the patio? And you're like, sure. So we got together at the patio and you're like, I've been watching you on Facebook. Like, what the heck is going on with you? And I was like, I've gone crazy. Here's what I'm doing. Like, I know it makes no sense at all, but like, I know I have to do this. And I was like, what's going on with you? And you were like, I've gone crazy. And
Yeah.
so like, I think we recognized that we both had like taken this very unconventional path to deepen ourselves spiritually and to open ourselves to what felt like guidance and an insight and a different way of looking at things and people and places and an energy. I wasn't feeling the energy as strongly as you were, but there definitely was an energy attached to it. And so then over the next several months, as I was like literally doing, every state, I was in a different state every week. I just felt motivated to reach out to you from time to time when things got tough because I knew you were also on a very unconventional spiritual path. And then you said there were times when you just felt led to like share something with me that you thought would be important. Exactly. And then eventually I ended up back in Vero, and that was January. January, I ended up back in Vero, and how did I was like, hey, I'm back in Vero, Wes. Like, I'm going for a walk on the beach. Do you want to go for a walk on the beach and catch up? And I was super curious about like, how are things working for you? Like, it's been almost a year since we've seen each other, and I wanted to share with you like how things were going with me. And even though we had like connected on Facebook a little bit, I think we'd had a couple of phone conversations, but I said like, let's go for a walk on the beach. So we did. And then I was talking about like, I was checking out some of the local yoga studios. I was looking at what was going on like in the spiritual community in Vero. And I was like, I read about this sound bath thing. Like, I think I'm going to go to that. And you're like, I know this guy. I know that guy. And I was like, you do? And you're like, yeah, he does like meditations every morning, like Monday through Friday. And you were like, do you want to go? And I was like, have you been going? And you're like, yeah, I've been going. And I was like, sure, I'll go. So we went to meditation. And then after meditation, you invited us to lunch. And I was like, sure, I'm hungry. So we went to lunch. Oh, and I was doing this.
Yeah. We go to Panera to eat, and we're sitting there talking, and she gets this weird look on her face, and she goes, I got this idea. I said, what? She goes, I'm going to do it live at 11:11. I want you to be on it with this soulmate thing I'm starting. I'm like, what? Like, oh, no.
Yeah, so when I was driving down to Vero, I literally felt this download saying like, you need to do a series on soulmates. You need to go live every day on Facebook and do a series on soulmates. And I was like, why the heck would I do that? Like, I haven't done very well in the whole like relationship department, and I'm not a relationship coach. And what the heck do I know about soulmates anyways? But I had learned enough after 18 months of being on the road and developing this like really close connection with the universe that like when you get guidance and you just act on it, like it's the most amazing adventure. Like I've been on the most amazing adventure for the last 18 months because I say yes to invitations from the universe. So it made no sense to me at all why on earth I would be doing a series on soulmates and going live like every day on Facebook. But I was like, okay, if that's what you want me to do. So I literally pulled off the side of the road in North Carolina at a rest stop. And I went live on Facebook and I was like, hey, I'm doing this like soulmate series every day, live at 11:11 a.m. Join me. And then I like stopped the Facebook live and I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing. So I got to Vero and yeah, we did meditation and then we went to lunch and then I realized what time it was. It was like almost 11 o'clock. And I was like, hey, like I have to go live at 11:11. I was like, I need to take a few minutes and make some notes. And if you don't mind, I'm going to just like record my video and then like we can finish our conversation. And you're like, sure. So I started just like taking notes on like, well, what am I going to talk about today? And I literally was like, I'm supposed to ask Wes to be on this video. And so I was like, Wes, I think I'm supposed to ask you to come on this video with me. And you're like, what?
Yeah, because I wasn't into the soulmate thing at all.
I wasn't into the soulmate.
I was looking at you going, okay, she's like kind of calling my bluff here about, are you really spiritually being led and open to possibilities? So my inner guidance said, well, if you don't do this spontaneously, then you're not walking your talk. And the other part of me was like, oh crap, oh man, I don't know if I want to do this. But we did. What was beautiful is we did an 18-minute version on our laptop, and it was a great interview. We were flowing back and forth, and my friend Steve Hart types the messages and goes, we can't hear you. We're like, oh no, 18 minutes shot to hell. They can't hear us. So Sonya's like, okay, that's no problem. I'll try my phone. I'm like, okay, here we go. And we did another whole interview, which was a little different than the first one, but pretty close. And that's how this all got started.
And you really, that interview was all just about like how people think a soulmate relationship is this romantic, like, oh, I need to find my other half thing.
Right.
And we were just kind of like questioning that like typical traditional paradigm, saying like, I don't think it's about finding a missing half, somebody to complete you. I think a soulmate relationship is more about like someone who holds up a mirror so you can see things about yourself that you couldn't see otherwise. And you had like a similar philosophy. So it actually was this really great conversation because we realized that we both had similar mindsets when it came to like the role of a soulmate relationship and the role of like you as a person and what you're supposed to bring to that relationship. So can you talk like a little bit about that?
Yeah, and I'll take us to Melbourne too, because after we started talking, I'd seen from my spiritual growth on Facebook and people about twin flames and soulmates, how people had this romantic notion about a soulmate and how a lot of them were running into brick walls because they were going after that type of advertisement and they were finding that it didn't actually work like that all the time. So I'd come to the awareness of a lot of that relationship stuff is two needy people, two halves. Two needy people are coming to the table with neediness and they're getting more neediness. And then they're trying to figure out why it isn't working. Whereas if you've done some inner work on yourself, you're a little bit more complete. You're working your way to being whole. So you can bring something to the table that you can offer something. So it was more of a complementing each other's energy instead of coming and needing each other. So it wasn't.
So you're coming with something to give,
Yes.
as opposed to what can I like?
Yeah.
I need something to fill this emptiness in me. It's like I feel full, so out of my abundance, I have something to offer.
Right.
Yeah.
So it was a different slant on what a real soulmate would be about. And then I mentioned to her that we have a spiritual group up in Melbourne that we do every Thursday. Would she be interested in going? She can meet Steve Hart. He's a friend of mine. And she's like, looks around, does that intuition thing. She goes, yeah, that'd be cool. So then we go up there that Thursday, and on the way back from that thing, I was asking her, what's your plans in life? And as we was driving back from Melbourne, and I said, where are you at with the relationship thing in your life and what you're doing? Because I was curious, because I was kind of feeling out where she was at. And she's like, well, I've got my mind made up. I got 3 years of hard work ahead of me, and I will be in no relationships whatsoever for at least 2 years to 3, because I've got this plan set up. I'm going to be doing these journeys, the Vision Quest.
Vision quest.
I'm laying it out, and I'm not going to let anything derail me or get me off track. And I was like, okay, I can understand that. So it's like, hands off. Okay, go for it, Sonya. And then she started talking about an upcoming trip that she was going to go to Mexico, and she needed somebody to help her get to the airport. Would it be a possibility? And if it was, let her know in a week or so if I could take her to the airport. And we kind of parted ways after that day. And she went off and did what, Sonya likes to do, checking out all the new groups around Vero. And then she called me back, and it was like, okay, I need to go at this time. I said, yeah, I can take you. So I went over to her house early in the morning and picked her up and drove her up to the airport and dropped her off and said, have a great time. I hope it works out for you. And then after she was there, she posted, she posted a few things, but the internet wasn't that great there. So it was a little difficult getting stuff to people to see what was going on at the time. But when it come time to pick her back up, I had a dream like a day before. And me and her was in the dream with a bunch of other people, and we were in like some kind of public place, but there was this real strong sexual overtone in the dream. But it wasn't about sex between me and her. It was just a general, there's a sexual energy here. So my brain's scrambling going, well, we're not attracted to each other. Why am I having this crazy dream? And my mind's going, well, you need to say this to her, because my intuition said something's happening down there sexually with you. And I'm just curious. So I was kind of on the fence going, I don't know, this might be inappropriate. I don't know her that well. I don't even think I should mention this. But anyway, on the way back from the airport from picking her up from Mexico, I went ahead and said, I had this weird dream. And I explained the dynamics to her. And
you were like, I had this dream and I feel really weird even talking to you about it. And if it's too personal, just tell me. Like, I don't even know if I should say it. You like hemmed and hawed for a good like couple minutes. And I was like, It's okay. Yeah, go ahead. What kind of dream did you have?
I asked her, had she been sexually challenged in some way down there in Mexico? And she gave me this weird look. And she goes, well, yeah, kinda.
I was doing some deep inner work in Mexico, and one of the breakthroughs had to do with a sexual traumatic event from my childhood. And it was very challenging, and it was very, it was very powerful. And so you were like asking me like, were you challenged sexually down in Mexico? And I was like yeah. Like, how the hell would you know that? Why did you have a dream? What was this dream? And I was like, yeah.
Yeah, and she was giving me those typical looks that a female would give a male. She's like, what's this guy's angle? What is he up to? What is he really trying to say? Did he really have a dream, or what is he up to? On the way back, she looked pretty spent. And I said, you look like you may be hungry. You want to stop and grab something for dinner before I drop you off at your house. So we stopped at Olive Garden, and we had another conversation there and mentioned some things that were really coincidental about portals and temple columns. And I mentioned a thing about a dream I'd had, and she's like, oh my God, I've been there.
You did. You said what? Something about you dreamed about a Stargate, and I was like, oh my gosh, like I just got attuned to the Akashic records, and like that's how I get into the records is through this star. I was like, how did you, it looks just like how you described it in your dream. Like, how did you see my Stargate? For sure.
Yeah.
And then other things too, in the conversation, it was just like you would say something and I'd be like, how is that possible? Or I would say something and it would like resonate with you. And there was definitely just this like weird, like
weird. We said weird a whole lot.
That was like,
we said weird a lot.
Well, there were a lot of commonalities too that I had no idea that we had those kinds of things in common, and had experienced, like I had just done a traditional Temazcal, which is a sweat lodge ceremony in Mexico. And you shared with me an experience that you had in a sweat lodge, the Native American style. And there was just a lot of things that I didn't realize that we had in common, both in terms of experiences and philosophies and
Yep.
yeah, spiritual ideas and that.
So
So
then,
the conversation was great, but we had been at dinner for like 2 hours and
yeah,
and you were like, well, do you want to like come back to the house? We could like build a fire or something, or, and just, continue our conversation. And I was like, sure. Cause I'm like super amped up from the pilgrimage that I was just on in Mexico. And I know I can't go back to my son's place and la, 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 la about all this spiritual stuff that just happened to me. Cause he's going to be like, my mom's off her rocker. And so it was like great to have an outlet to say like, oh my gosh, like all this stuff happened to me, and not have you looking at me going like, ooh, let me take this girl to the hospital instead of her son's house. So it felt really good to like be able to like process some of that with someone who wasn't in judgment and actually seemed like you were like getting what I was saying. So when you said like, do you want to continue the conversation back at the house? I was like, yeah, that sounds fantastic. I would love to keep talking.
yeah,
So we go back to your place and we go into your office, which you're sitting in right now.
right,
And I was sitting on the other side of the desk, like over there.
yep,
And we kept talking and you kept asking me all kinds of like spiritual questions. So now we're trying to get like a gauge on each other, like in general, like what kind of spiritual experiences have you had? So
yeah,
you're like asking me these questions and you're asking me more about Mexico, and you told me about this dream you had or this vision you had. Do you remember? You were like, the other night I had this vision. I was in my room and there was a crown.
yeah. It was really bizarre. The reason I only mentioned it was the colors were so vibrant. I mean, they were literally fluorescent colors. But I literally, as I was meditating, I caught a glimpse out of the side of my vision of this like jewels. They were bright fluorescent purples, and they were like 5 or 6 of them. They looked like jewels at first. And I was told that you should never look at anything when you're meditating directly because it'll cause it to dissipate sometimes, to look away slightly and it'll stay there longer. But I couldn't do that with this. It was too bright. It was too pronounced. So I went ahead and looked at it even closer. And as I was looking at what I thought were jewels, they turned into like little people shaped Buddhas in that color. And then I instantly got the impression that these weren't Buddhas. These were beings that were around me somehow. And I don't have that kind of stuff happen to me very often. And that was really quinky dink. So that's why I shared it with you.
Yeah, and you were like, do you think they might be guides? Like, do you have guides? Do you think they might be guides? And I was like, well, they might be. Like, I don't know. Like, they could be guides. I mean, we do have guides. And I was like, that's really cool. But like, what about the eagle?
And I didn't say
And you were like,
eagle.
what about the eagle? And I was like, you said you saw an eagle. You're like, no, I saw a crown. And on top of the crown were these jewels, these purple jewels, but they weren't really jewels. They looked like, and so you said the whole thing. I was like, yeah, I got all that. But like you said that you saw this crown, and then I saw the vision of an eagle flying over this crown. And then I realized that the jewels weren't jewels. They were Buddhist. You're like, I didn't say eagle. And I was like, you totally said eagle. And you're like, I did not say eagle. And I was like, Wes, you literally said, I saw the vision of an eagle flying over this crowd. And you're like, I did not say that. And I was like, yes, you did. No, I didn't. Yes. And I was like, I was so confused because I heard it. An eagle is one of my totems.
Right.
And so I was super curious about this vision of an eagle, and you were insisting you hadn't said it. And I knew I heard you say it. And at that moment you like looked down on your shirt because you were wearing like a flannel shirt, like over your shirt, over a t-shirt. And on your t-shirt was an eagle and a dragonfly, which is another one of my totem animals. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
that's really weird. That's so bizarre.
Well, and besides the communication being so rich and strange, she has learned about Reiki, so she wanted to practice some Reiki on me. So she sat over here and put her hands above my hands and said, here, do you feel anything? And then this weird energy started happening. And I've been around Reiki before where you get really warm and hot and when they're putting healing energy out, but this energy was different. It felt really different, almost like a magnetism. It was, I don't know, it was different. It was Reiki, but it was amplified in a different way.
I was actually sitting across your desk and I said, here, put your hand out. So you put your hand on your desk and I put one hand under your hand and I put my other hand over your hand and you had your hand in between mine and I was giving you Reiki. And I could tell you were getting uncomfortable because you like were literally like holding your arm like this and you were like wanting to like pull your hand out, but trying to like leave your hand in. And I could tell you were just like, like wanting to withdraw, but wanting to like hang in there. And I didn't know what was going on with you. I was just like, oh, I guess he's like, Reiki makes him weird or something. I didn't realize you were feeling like a strange, like energy signature.
Yeah. So we wrapped that up and it was time to take her home. Went to the place. It was dark. I didn't have the lights on inside the car and her stuff was in the trunk. And as we got out, got all her stuff out of the trunk, she went into the house. I drove home. And unbeknownst to me, I got out to the car the next morning. I was going to clean it out, take it to where I needed to take it. And I noticed her phone was in the seat. This is like 10 o'clock. And I'm like, oh man, she left her phone. And of course your brain goes, was this on purpose or was this by accident? And then I'm thinking it was dark. She couldn't see it. And then I got a hold of her on Facebook because she didn't have a phone. I said, do you want to come and, I found your phone. Do you want to come and pick it up or do you want me to drop it off? And she said, oh, I'll come over and get it.
I was like, I've got my car now. I can come pick it up. You don't have to come over here. No problem. You're like, great. You're like, well, I'm making some chocolate coffee and I have a fire going in the front yard. And I was like, cool. That sounds amazing. I'll come have a cup of coffee.
Yep. So we hang out and share more notes and talk during the day and all kinds of good stuff. And there's all this coincidence things happening. It's really quite bizarre.
Well, and one of the really unique things that was happening is that you were very honest. And it really struck me in the conversation because typically when you're like just, even if you're hanging out with a friend that you know really well, and here we are not really knowing each other. I mean, we've known each other for 15 years, but it's been professionally and we don't see each other very often. And so like, we don't know each other really well. And yet you were communicating with a level of honesty that I was taken aback by because it's not typical. It's not typical that people talk without a mask on. And that was what I was feeling was that like, there's no mask on you. Like you're literally just sitting there talking to me as a real person, not wearing a mask and saying things that were probably making you uncomfortable, but you were being like totally honest about what what you wanted to talk about. And I was like, this is really refreshing to just like talk to someone and know you're talking to the real them. And I was really drawn into that conversation because one of my favorite things is great conversation, but it's hard to have great conversation with people who are wearing masks. And it usually takes a long time to like get to a level of honesty that you even feel like you're having a legitimate conversation with a real person. And here I am, you give me a cup of coffee and the fire's going and you start talking and I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is like really Wes. He's like not wearing a mask at all. And I was just really drawn into that. I was like, whoa, this is different and this feels really good. I feel like we're really making a connection here.
Yeah. It was quite bizarre to say the least. And it was a great day. And then it come time that you needed to leave. Forget how that worked though.
I think it was just getting on like dinner time and I was like, well, I guess Cameron's going to be making dinner or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
And then literally like nature intervened.
Yeah, it's like sunny, warm, hot Florida and no cloud in the sky. No joke, no kidding. But we do have intermittent rain showers down here, but they weren't happening at the time. And we go out the door to get her to get in her car and leave, and it's ripping a new one. I mean,
We open the door and it's like, I
yeah.
mean, like torrential downpour. And we're like, where the heck did that come from? Like,
So I looked at her and I said, that's a little too heavy. I mean, even for Florida standards, this was bizarre. I said, maybe we ought to wait a little. Maybe the weather doesn't want us leaving right at this moment, so we can wait a few minutes. So I had a massage chair in my front room, and I said, why don't you try that out
right next to the door.
while we're waiting? Why don't you just get on that, and I'll push program, and it'll run for 15 minutes, and by that time, hopefully the rain has stopped. So what she's
So
doing,
I'm like, yeah, massage chair. For sure.
while she's doing that, I sit across from her on the floor on a cushion, and I start meditating. Figure if while we're here, I'll just pass the time and de-stress, let some of this energy, level out. And while I'm meditating, I put my hands down towards my lower to middle chakra, and I'm sitting there, they're kind of cupped like this. And all of a sudden I start feeling this buzzing feeling. And I don't feel things very often when I'm meditating. I'll get insights, but not physical sensations. And this buzzing started happening. And I was like, wow, that's kind of cool. What is that about? So I'm exploring that because I'm like, wow, there's some kind of energy happening here. This is wicked cool. So I'm like, zzz, and I'm trying to figure it out. And I'm not saying nothing to her because I'm like, this don't happen. So I'm not going to share this. This is too new. And the machine run for 15 minutes and kicked off. And when the machine kicked off, the buzzing stopped. And I'm the logical type guy. If there's a ghost in the house, I'm looking for the cord mirrors and everything that made it happen. So I'm like, what the heck? I said, well, Sonya, she said the machine's done. I said, no, wait, use the other program. Hit the B side. So she went ahead and I pushed the B button and I got back down and meditated. And sure enough, the buzzing started again. She doesn't know any of this. So I'm sitting there going,
I'm just sitting there. I'm meditating in the massage chair, getting a nice massage. I'm meditating. He's over across the room meditating over there. I'm like, yeah, second 15 minutes. Sure, I'll take another massage.
So at this point, detective soul guy, me, I'm like, okay, this is spiritual crazy. I'm going to figure this thing out. So I'm waiting for that machine to shut off and I'm feeling this in my hands. So I'm like, okay, it's buzzing. Okay, let's just see how this goes. And sure enough, as soon as that massage chair stopped, the buzzing stopped. And I said, Sonya, what were you doing over there? And she's like, what do you mean? And she goes, I wasn't doing anything. I was meditating and getting a good massage. And I said, what were you thinking? And she didn't have any real definitive answer. And that's when I said, I don't understand it, but somehow energy over there is being released and I'm feeling it over here in my hands as a buzzing feeling. And that never happens. So it's as bizarre as I'll get at. And she's looking at me like, well, this dude's like one short, step of a Kool-Aid. He's kind of a little crazy. But then you go, it's Reiki, Wes. It's Reiki energy. And I'm like, well, how? You're over there. I'm over here. And it's the chair doing it. When it stops, it stops. But anyway, that's when
then you asked me a question. Do you remember that question?
I asked you a ton of questions that night.
Well, you specifically said, I feel I'm supposed to ask you why your heart is crying.
Yes, that came to me.
And I literally sat there like...
Those exact words came to me.
Because while I was meditating, I was tearing up and I didn't really know why, but I was tearing up. And you were like, I'm supposed to ask you why your heart is crying. And I'm like...
I didn't know you were tearing up. I couldn't see your eyes from that distance.
And I was like, what the hell is happening?
I know. So that's when we went.
And so we're standing there looking at each other like...
Yeah, there's something happening here that we can't explain, and I don't know what it is, and it doesn't have a sexual tone to it. It's more spiritual connected energy. And I'm like, how do you feel about this? And she's like, I'm not sure. She goes, but I don't know. I'm not shut down to exploring it, but I don't understand it. I said, I don't understand it either.
I was like, but obviously there's some kind of energetic connection going on here because we're feeling each other's energy on like a level that I cannot explain. I've never experienced anything like this before.
That's why I kept asking her what things about Mexico, because she couldn't tell me a lot because it's
I
private.
know, he was like, what happened down there?
It's like, yeah, what the heck did you people open up down there? What kind of energy thing did you tap into? So that's when it started getting to where let's see what this is. And we felt really close to each other, so we started hugging. And I
You
asked,
said you wanted to give me a hug because like you felt
yeah,
like the tears. You're like, I feel like I need to give you a hug. Like your heart is crying. Like I feel like I need to give you a hug. And I was like, I could use a hug.
yeah,
And then we hugged and it was like all crazy.
yeah,
Like, whoa. And it was like heart energy going on. I felt third eye energy going on. I felt like I was like, oh my gosh, I have no idea what that is happening right now.
yeah, because we're like friends. And it's
But
like,
there was also just this sense of like letting go. Just like oh God, this feels so good. Like there was a relaxation. There was like a settling in. It was just like I can breathe, and it felt so good. Yeah.
yeah,
In
so
that way.
we decided to hang out with each other for a couple of days with the hands-off policy and just see where this energy was going to take us. And I was going to take you to the airport so you could go to the Philippines and that next Saturday. So that's where this journey has
Yeah,
gotten.
so we hung out over the week and spent a lot of time together and we're like, what is this? And we decided not to call it anything.
Right.
We're like, let's not make the same mistakes that we've always made before. Like there's obviously a connection here. It's obviously a strong one, but I don't want to do things the way that I've always done them. Like let's approach this from a different angle. Let's just not call it anything. Let's just take one day at a time, one step at a time and like see where the connection takes us.
And that's where
We also decided that we were going to be 100% honest with each other about everything and that was going to be like the foundation of the relationship.
yeah, because you asked me, what is this? And I said, I'm not sure, but I know it will not work if there's not 100% integrity and honesty. I just know that. I don't know how I know that. I just know that this energy will not exist if we're not agreeable on that point.
And neither one of us really wanted anything from the other person. In fact, we were both kind of like, hey, I got my thing going on over here. And you're like, I got my thing going on over here. And I was like, I don't know, like, I don't really have a lot to like, I think we both were kind of like, I don't want anything to interrupt what I got going on over here.
Right.
And so we were both kind of just like, there was no expectation for like, you need to call me every day or we need to like label this in some form or fashion. It was just kind of like, I'm going to do my thing over here and you do your thing over there. And like when we can connect, we'll connect and let's just like explore what's possible. And that's kind of where we left it when I went to the Philippines.
Yeah, we were also realizing how sacred this energy was that was happening between us. It had a different dynamic than the regular relationships. It was,
Which is why we couldn't just walk away and be two people doing their own things. Like there was
yeah,
that sacredness to that energy connection and more synchronistic things were happening that really led us to believe like we're kind of supposed to explore this. It felt like there was an outside force
yeah,
that was like giving us an invitation to say like, hey, this could be really cool. Take a look at this. Like, I know you wouldn't otherwise look at this. Said,
Yeah.
I'm going to drop these like mysterious things in front of you to get your attention, to make you wonder like what is going on here. And so that was why we couldn't really just walk away either. It did feel like this is a unique connection, and it feels like there's like all of this like mysterious synchronicity happening that just cannot, there's no way that it can be coincidental. So, and I think that's one of the things that we wanted to kind of be a takeaway is that is that your soulmate can literally be standing right in front of you and you not know it.
Right.
And so if I had a list of things I wanted out of my soulmate, you wouldn't have met that list.
Right.
And I don't know if you had a list thing going on, but everybody's got a list thing going on these days. And I was like, Wes would not meet the things I have on my list that I think I want in a soulmate. And yet I couldn't deny that there was a connection happening here on a level that I had never experienced before. And so one of the things that we're hoping that the audience can take away is, be in your spiritual journey, like you're opening yourself to universal energy and you're following the breadcrumbs and you're seeing signs and symbols for things, and be open to possibilities presenting themselves that are unexpected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we both agreed that we didn't know where this was going, how it was going to go, how long it was going to go. And if anything changed, it was utmost important that we both kept each other in the loop if something did shift, that we didn't hide anything from each other about that. And it was quite liberating in that sense. It was like no control. You weren't there to control the other person.
Exactly. We weren't setting expectations on each other for how I expect you to treat me, how I expect you to act, like there were no demands at all. It was just like, this is a great connection. It feels like there's something unusual and unexpected and special happening here. And let's just see where it goes.
So we're a little bit over an hour now. So,
But you're going to edit this anyways.
but then you went to the Philippines. You're going to be gone for 2 weeks, and that's where
And I was literally on a soulmate survivor quest that I had a group of virtual ladies joining me. And so I was doing a lot of inner work when it came to that. But that's another chapter, right?
Exactly.
That's another chapter.
So
So maybe
that's where we'll stop this, and to be continued.
any closing thoughts?
This is scary work. It's been scary from day one, never knowing where it's going to go and how it's going to feel.
Yeah, like the day Sonya goes for a run and then I text Wes and I'm like, I have a terrifying idea. I think we should start recording our conversations and make videos out of them. And he's like, what? I want to add you to my secret Facebook group. I want you to bring in the masculine perspective. He's like, what?
Exactly.
And so here we are. And that's pretty much what we're going to do, right? We're just going to, when we get on the phone to talk to each other about stuff, we're just going to hit record. We're going to have authentic, genuine conversation with one another. And then you're going to edit video to pull out parts and pieces that we think would be of value.
Yeah.
So people can see what a soulmate relationship based on two wholes coming together to complement each other and support each other, and what that energetic connection and exchange looks like with total honesty and integrity, and how it might differ from how you typically experience a more traditional romantic relationship.
Yep. All right. That's where we'll conclude then.
Good conversation.
All righty.
All right.